Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security-oriented policies to guide the state of Israel. We are a movement of more than 20,000 people, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing, as well as our previous briefings. Right now, I'm on the Gaza border. You can see Jabalia behind us if you look closely. And apologies if we have some reception, some internet issues. And as always, we are very happy to be joined by Danny Seaman, who is going to provide our updates right now. With that, Danny, I'll give you the floor.
All right, I'm once again in the relief pitcher position here. I was also out in the field today. My son that you all met a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, he today completed his military service. I had to take him to the paratroopers base to have him sign out on all his equipment or whatever was left of it. And also there's a group of people from Tennessee, some of them who do follow us here, who contributed some equipment to the paratroopers. It was given to them today and they were very happy with it. They'll get a personal thank you from them. So I want to thank you for your contribution. And the soldiers will be receiving it in the field today. So we had to do this makeshift because we couldn't get one of our commanders on. I couldn't get, we're also waiting for our guest today who's having technical problems. The guest is supposed to be Dr. Ron Schifler. And Ron, who those of you remember, when I first spoke here, I spoke about the book that I wrote about the Israel and the foreign media. It was together with Dr. Ron Schifler, but Ron has written several books. One of them, what we were asking him to talk about today, is the advocating propaganda. He is an expert on psyops and psychological warfare. So hopefully he'll be able to get on and join us. Some of the issues today, the battle inside of Gaza continues in the Khan Yunis area. From what we're understanding, the extent of the tunnels was beyond anything we could imagine. Our soldiers are fighting there, and hold on 1 minute. I got a message from Ron. Let's see if he's able to join us. He says he's on, but I think he's not. Do you see him, Moshe?
I don't see him. Let me see if I can work it on this end.
Okay.
Keep talking and I'll see what I can do with him.
All right. So what we saw there with the tunnels is beyond anything that we even realized. So the battle there continues. You know, I was talking to my son on the way there to his base today, and we talk about Israel being the high-tech nation and everything we've done as a small country and where we've invested in what we've been successful at. And you know what? If the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, and especially in the Gaza Strip, they've been able to do underneath the Gaza Strip more than the New York City underground, what they did there with the subway system in New York City. In 12 years, they've done 3-4 times more in Gaza. They could have become experts for tunneling around the world, but instead they took it to something negative. I'm being very facetious right now, but they took it to something negative instead of doing something positive. From the moment that Israel left the Gaza Strip 20 some years ago, they could have done something very positive there. I see that Ron will be with us in a moment. We've been successful in reaching him. So the battle there continues, and at the same time, as we spoke about yesterday, they're continuing with the situation, with the negotiations, with Qatar and Egypt, with the United States. As I mentioned yesterday, still not clear. There does seem to be positive movement on that, and I think this is the essence of it. And one of the reasons we wanted to have Ron with us today was to talk about, because one of the strongest elements in this whole negotiation process, besides the whole war with Hamas, they use a lot of the psyops and psychological warfare against Israel, and most certainly in the negotiations going on right now, and they're affecting the public. So I thought, and I see Dr. Ron Schifler is with us, and I think we can move on with him. Can you hear us, Ron?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Dr. Schifler is with Ariel University. right?
Yes, correct.
And he is a psychological warfare specialist at Ariel University. And Ron and I wrote our book together on the foreign press. I gave my experience on the field, and he gave the, I guess, the psychological aspects of the manipulation of media in the modern scene of battle. But as I mentioned, as you got on, that what we want to talk about today is more, I would take it anywhere in general, from the psychological aspects of the battle of Hamas and insights you can give us on that, and also especially on the issues pertaining to the manipulation being done around the issue, which is very sensitive to Israelis, of the hostages and freeing them. So over to you, Ron.
Hi, thank you very much, Danny, for having me. I'll start by saying psychological warfare. That's the sharpest, cleanest definition is the art and science how to make your own soldiers patriots, and the enemy soldiers pacifists. Meaning those who cannot, for various reasons, don't have the heavy weapons, so they need to have something else. And if I can use a parable, if you don't have a gun strong enough, big enough, heavy enough to shoot against your enemy, so what you do is you persuade your enemy not to pull the trigger. So Hamas, compared to Israel, in a sense, is it's an elephant and a mosquito. So the question is, what can a mosquito do to an elephant? No, basically head to head, that's no match. So the mosquito would penetrate into the elephant's ear and start to make him dizzy from the inside. And of course, it's very difficult for the elephant to chase out this mosquito. Now, this mosquito, in this sort of comparison, is the thought and the motivation to keep Israel out of Gaza, or do it half-heartedly, or using only a fraction of its military potential. Day before yesterday there were two very interesting elements on the psychological warfare on behalf of Hamas. One was the release of a well-presented video clip showing three young women who are kept hostage in Gaza, presumably in Gaza or in the Sinai or anywhere else. So so they are they clearly look well taken care of, which is a message. They are well dressed, relatively speaking, and very emotional with their appeal towards Prime Minister Netanyahu, not to forget them and to set them free. Now it's obvious that they are reading a script, and they have rehearsed it because they show emotion. But if you look closely, you see how staged it is. This is one element. The other element was a document which was found in one of the field headquarters of Hamas, in one of the larger tunnels, and saying what are the psychological warfare aims of Hamas, and that is to press the defense minister Gallant more psychologically, to have more effective pressure on him. Another element is to persuade the Israelis that a combatant move in Gaza would not free the hostages, will not get the hostages free sooner than with the negotiations. in general, the hostages taking the taken hostages are a brilliant coup on behalf of Hamas, because the army is working with one hand and one leg tied together, because there's always the fear that that we might harm the hostages, and this is very difficult to conduct warfare.
And they have said that
such a
several
position.
times, saying that that hostages that we know they murdered, that this was done by Israeli.
Yes, and and then they want, in the beginning they announced that a certain hostage was killed by Israelis, and then they released her. So you can imagine the shift that the family is undergoing from deep sorrow about when their relative is deceased, is killed. And then 2 days later, the kid comes back, and this is a total mental disruption, which is done on purpose. They have collected the story or the life story of every hostage, and every day or two, they release another item of information about this old man who needs medication. They say, we're taking care of our hostages, unlike you Israelis who are mistreating our captives, etc., etc. So this is to play and erode the Israeli nervous system and general mood and morale.
So the psychological aspect of this, they talk about the prisoner exchange. I want to go back to that for a moment.
Yes.
Do they really care about their prisoners, or is this whole effort an attempt to weaken the resolve of the Israeli society? To what end, psychologically?
Yeah, it could be answered in two ways. Let's take, for example, the mother of a child who she dresses him up as a shaheed with the whole outfit and explosive, and says, I'm sending him with all my enthusiasm to his death. Now, this is on the outside. On the inside, the message is completely different, and she wants him alive. But as a general, externally, the whole Palestinian society is behind, in Gaza at least, is behind this message that we don't mind to die. You care about life, and we care about death. This is a very stimulating and strong statement, which is designed to persuade the Israelis, soldiers, reservists, and politicians to lead them to the thought, look, these guys are completely nuts. There's nothing we can do against them. And this is a very successful ploy, which is done not only in Israel, it's done also by Al-Qaeda, by Daesh, ISIS, whatever form and shape they're taking. Whatever our planners are trying to plan, to analyze what's going to be our next move, they are paralyzed by such a thought. Come on, they're not rational. They don't think the way we do. They will gladly die. There has to be a political solution rather than a military solution. And this is exactly what Hamas is after.
So how do we combat that in a way? How do we undermine both the efforts they're doing on us and at the same time what they're doing to their own society? And I believe there is psychological warfare that Israel's conducting. Can you give us some insights to the actions that Israel is taking and to what end?
Well, the biggest question throughout all my career is why Israel is so reluctant to do propaganda and psychological warfare. We're not so good at, admittedly, we're not so good at this field. This is a given. What we the time to persuade has already gone. When the first shot was shot after October 7th, there's no time for persuasion. This is the time for action. Now, what psychological warfare is after, once the battle has started, is to inform the target audience, in this case, Hamas and the civilian population of Gaza, and to a lesser extent towards the Islamic world and the Western world, to instruct them how to go, how to let themselves fall prisoner to our forces and save their lives. We instruct them to move to the humanitarian zone. We instruct them to how to surrender, etc. This is the high time of psychological warfare during battle. Before that, they have invested decades in persuading us that they are unbeatable, and the whole Gaza Strip is going to be a death trap should Israel dare to set a foot inside Gaza. Now that is past. They failed, and we let them for decades to rearm themselves, but that is gone. Now we're looking at what to do throughout the battlefield, during battle, and we also need to take care of what's going to be the messages and what we want to instruct them to do after the fighting is over. Now, the trouble is that during battle, the military commanders have no energy or time or attention to spare to such important moves, because they need to take care of defeating the enemies, and that's the top priority. Hamas, in a stark contradiction to this, they need to stay alive. They need to persuade Israel to surrender. And the way they do it, they provide information, little bits, tiny bits of information every day, in order to force the Israeli high command and the prime minister and the government to have them under constant pressure on their cortex. As look at first of all, your priorities are wrong. First of all, you have to take care of the hostages and free the hostages, and you have to strike a deal. Now, we know that if there is a deal that would lead to the cessation of combat, it would be very difficult to resume the combat, at least in the south. And this is the game. This is how it works.
We were talking
Yeah, so
I would say we were talking now about Gaza, and you mentioned that there's certain type of warfare that happens before the war, and then there's what happens during the war. And though we are engaged in exchanges of fire with Hezbollah, we're in a way before the war there. Is there any comments you can make on what's happening in that area?
Yeah. The psychological warfare aspect of the struggle again, or the fight against Hezbollah, naturally did not start in October 7th. It started decades ago, and it started in the late 80s. And then in a brilliant campaign of 15 years, they chased us out of the security zone and inside Israel. Now, you have to understand that in the Arab world, whenever you sign some sort of a ceasefire or any sort of agreement, you start to break the agreement right away. but not in a stark way, not in a ostentatious way, but a small step. And this is basically the strategy of the Islamic warfare, step by step. I mean, you don't break the agreement because somebody just posted a poster or dug a foxhole where he shouldn't have. And then later on, then the foxhole is strengthened, and then it becomes a position, and then it has an underground construct, etc., etc. Now, Hezbollah has developed a unique way of psychological warfare. It's unique because it either came from Iran, and we should not underestimate Iran, and we should not underestimate the Shiites, and we should not underestimate the Arabs in general. The strategy of Hezbollah was to say that in combat, what matters most in combat is the footage that comes out of this combat. It doesn't matter how many Israelis were killed. It doesn't matter how many of Hezbollah are killed. It doesn't matter what the damage was done. What matters is the footage of the operation, and then the footage is broadcast day in, day out, with various comments and various edits and combined with other clips, and again and again and again. So we thought, very much like the American Army in Vietnam after the McNamara doctrine of what's it called? I forgot the term. The body count, which was how it was popularly known. The body count. The matters how many VC or Hezbollah, for that matter, we killed. And that was a mistake then, and it's a mistake now, because they don't care how many of them get killed in battle, because it's not they are so so happy to die, at least what they declare. But well, the instinct to be alive is across all human race, unless you indoctrinate them for a very early age, and it matters in a few. It happens in a few cases, not in all of them, and so the footage, as I was saying. Now, Israelis saw that. First of all, the soldiers in Lebanon saw that, because it was within television reception. And then they increased the television broadcast power, the radio waves, and even the inhabitants of Haifa, the northern city in Israel, could watch it. And this
was at the time when Israel was still in South Lebanon, you mentioned.
Yes. And then, of course, they changed the messages. They don't want to occupy Israel. They don't want to free Jerusalem. All they want is to free the security zones. This is the stage doctrine, and the PLO also has this, also had such stage doctrine. Hamas does not have.
They were trained back in the day. Those same terrorist elements by the Soviets and by those who trained the North Vietnamese.
Yes.
So
we refer to that. Yeah, we refer to that in our book. Arafat was trained by General Giap, the head chief of staff of the Northern Vietnamese army, who managed to persuade America to back down from Vietnam. Even though after the Tet Offensive in 1968 and all of that, militarily America won, but not politically. And here what is important to note and Hezbollah has inherited it, so to speak, from the PLO, and Hamas is also using this, is that the maxim of General Giap is that it doesn't matter what happened, that we didn't fight the real battle of the war in the jungles of North and South Vietnam. The real war took place on the streets of Washington. And this is something that Westerners need to consider very, very seriously. The body count doesn't matter in such battles, because we're not talking about hundreds of thousands. We're talking about one from a village or two from a neighborhood. So what matters is the political aspect, and the Hezbollah is working on the international arena. They have a very broad network in all the Western countries, along with the Arab world and Asia, and wherever there is a Shiite community, lots of such in Africa, etc. So what they do, they communicate with all of them, and just to say in brackets is Hezbollah is an international Iranian secret organization, and the Hezbollah we're talking about is just the Lebanese branch of this organization. So they have the backing of the Iranian government. And so basically what Israel should concentrate on Iran, to persuade Iran to pull back from Lebanon and from Gaza. But this is far more complicated.
That's what they're trying to do right now. I'm unfortunately have to cut in here.
Right.
Because we have half an hour to hold people and give them the time. We could have continued talking on this for hours, which you and I usually do. But I don't want to take away from people's time. Moshe, turning it back over to you. Thank you, Ron.
Danny,
very welcome. Good luck with all those
endeavors. For sharing all of this. Bye. Very much appreciated. A very new perspective for us to hear on these briefings. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and all of our supporters for tuning in. I did have a lieutenant colonel sitting next to me. We were going to try to get him on, but we've run out of time. So until tomorrow, everyone should stay safe, stay strong, take care. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time. All the best.